Have you ever felt crushed by failure? Maybe you made a promise you couldn't keep. Maybe you stood in front of an opportunity, but fear made you run away. Or maybe you wanted to be strong for someone, but when the moment came, you broke under pressure. If you've ever felt the weight of disappointment in yourself, you are not alone. We live in a world that celebrates success, but rarely talks about failure. Social media is filled with highlight reels, perfect smiles, achievements, and victories. But behind those smiles, many of us are fighting silent battles with regret and shame. It's in those moments, when we see our weakness, that we start to believe a dangerous lie. I'm not good enough. I failed too many times. My story is over. Think about the times when you said, I'll never do that again, and then you did. Or when you promised, I'll be brave this time, but fear gripped you and you backed away. You may look strong on the outside, but inside you feel like a fraud. And maybe you've wondered, can God still use someone like me? Can anything good come from all this weakness, all these mistakes? These questions echo in our hearts when life doesn't go the way we planned. But here's the truth. Failure is not the end. Weakness is not disqualification. In fact, the Bible shows us over and over that God chooses broken, imperfect people. People who mess up, people who stumble, people who don't have it all together. Why? Because it's in our weakness that His strength becomes visible. This is not just an idea. It has a story written into the life of one of Jesus' closest friends, Peter. A man who was bold with words but weak in action, who swore he would never fail but fell harder than anyone. Yet God did not abandon him. Instead, his failure became the turning point that shaped him into the leader he was meant to be. So if you've been carrying the weight of regret, if you've been haunted by your mistakes, lean in close. Peter's story is for you. It shows us that no matter how far we fall, God's grace can lift us higher. Peter was one of Jesus' closest followers. He was bold, outspoken, and always quick to speak. When others hesitated, Peter stepped forward. He was the one who walked on water, the one who declared, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." His passion was undeniable. But passion alone does not equal strength. On the night Jesus was arrested, Peter's confidence reached its peak. At the Last Supper, when Jesus warned that all his disciples would fall away, Peter insisted, "Even if everyone else abandons you, I never will." He even promised to die with Jesus rather than deny him. His words were strong, but his heart was not ready for the storm that was coming. Later that night, soldiers came to seize Jesus. Peter tried to prove his loyalty by drawing a sword and striking a servant. But Jesus told him to put the sword away. Violence was not the answer. And in that moment, Peter's courage began to crumble. He followed Jesus from a distance, watching as his master was taken to trial. In the courtyard, by the glow of a fire, people recognized Peter. A servant girl said, "You were with him." Fear surged through Peter's veins. He had been so bold before, but now the threat of death felt real. He shook his head and denied it, twice, and then a third time, swearing he had never known Jesus. At that moment, a rooster crowed. Just as Jesus had predicted, Peter had denied him 3 times before the morning. The Gospel of Luke says that Jesus turned and looked straight at Peter. Imagine the weight of that look, the disappointment, the heartbreak, the love. Peter remembered the words of Jesus, and he went outside and wept bitterly. This was not a small mistake. For Peter, it was total collapse. He had promised faithfulness, but failed spectacularly. He had sworn he would die with Jesus. But instead, he denied even knowing him. His courage had vanished, his strength exposed as weakness. Many of us know this feeling. We've said, "I'll never do that again," but then we fall. We've promised, "I'll be strong," but then we fail. Like Peter, we weep in secret, ashamed of our weakness. And like Peter, we ask ourselves, how can God use me now? But Peter's story doesn't end here. His failure, as devastating as it was, would become the ground for God's greatest work in his life. What looks like the end is often just the beginning in God's hands. Failure feels final when you're in it. For Peter, the sound of the rooster crowing was like the echo of his own shame. He believed he had disqualified himself. He had walked with Jesus, seen miracles, spoken bold words, and yet, in the most critical moment, he crumbled. If you've ever felt like your worst mistake has erased your future, you can understand Peter's heart. But God is not finished when we fall. After Jesus was crucified and buried, and then rose again, he sought out his disciples. And in John's Gospel, there is a beautiful moment on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. The risen Jesus cooked breakfast for his followers. And after they ate, he turned to Peter. 3 times he asked, "Do you love me?" And 3 times Peter answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Each time Jesus replied, "Feed my sheep." This was not an accident. Peter had denied Jesus 3 times. And now Jesus gave him 3 opportunities to reaffirm his love. It was not condemnation, but restoration. Jesus wasn't shaming Peter for his weakness. He was reminding him of his calling. He was saying, "Your failure doesn't define you. My grace does. Now get up and continue the mission." Imagine the relief in Peter's heart. The same man who once wept bitterly now found himself forgiven and recommissioned. His weakness had been exposed, but it had also been redeemed. He learned that strength does not come from self-confidence, but from God's grace. And the change was undeniable. In the book of Acts, Peter stood before crowds and boldly proclaimed the message of Jesus. The man who once trembled before a servant girl now preached fearlessly before rulers and authorities. The one who denied knowing Jesus now declared his name without shame. His failure had become the soil in which true courage grew. This is the pattern of God's work. He takes brokenness and makes it whole. He takes weakness and turns it into strength. He takes people who feel unworthy and uses them to change the world. Peter's story is proof that your past mistakes don't cancel your future. In fact, they can become the very testimony God uses to encourage others. Think about your own life. Maybe you've denied your faith in small ways, staying silent when you should have spoken up, compromising when you wanted to stand strong. Maybe you've failed again and again in the same struggle, and maybe you've wondered if God has given up on you. But Peter O's story tells us the opposite. God as grace is bigger than your failure. He is the God of second chances, the God who restores. Failure isn't final when God is in the picture. Weakness is not wasted when placed in his hands. What seems like the end can become the beginning of a new chapter. That is what happened for Peter. That is what can happen for you. Peter's story doesn't end with shame, it ends with strength. The man who once denied Jesus stood boldly before thousands, declaring the truth of the gospel. His weakness became his testimony. His failure became the very place where God's grace shined the brightest. And that same grace is available to you today. Maybe you are listening to this and you feel the weight of your own mistakes. You've fallen short, you've denied what you believe, or you've let fear silence you. And you might think, "I'm too weak. I've failed too many times." But Peter's journey proves otherwise. God does not write you off when you stumble. Instead, he reaches down, lifts you up, and writes a new chapter with your life. So let me ask you, what failure has been holding you back? What weakness has made you believe your story is over? Write it down in the comments. Share your journey. Because when we bring our struggles into the light, 2 powerful things happen. First, we realize we're not alone. And second, we create space for others to encourage us. Your comment might be the encouragement someone else desperately needs. Think of this community as more than just viewers. It is a family of people walking through real struggles, learning from the Bible, and finding hope together. When you share your story, you may discover that others have been through the same valley and come out stronger. And when you read their words, you'll know that your burden is lighter when carried together. So, don't keep your story hidden. If you're in a low season, write it down. If you've experienced God turning your weakness into strength, testify to it. Let's fill the comments with stories of hope and encouragement, a living reminder that God is not done with us yet. And if this message has spoken to you, I invite you to take one more step. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need the reminder that failure is not final. Every click, every share helps spread these stories of faith further, reaching people who may feel alone right now. Peter's story is not just history, it's a promise that your weakness can be transformed, your failure can be redeemed, and your life can be a testimony of God's strength. Hold on to that hope, live in that truth, and never forget your story is not over.